An empty church, and only one figure in a black dress is inside and thinks about her loss. The guy Kale, who was her last hope. Suddenly she stumbles and falls with her whole body to the floor. The heroine raises her head, and we notice that tears are rolling down her cheeks because she realizes that Kale was killed. The whole church hears the cry of a girl who turns to God and asks to return Kale. She is even ready to give her life for this. The heroine says that she was reborn into a character named Hestia. We learn that the girl fell asleep, and when she woke up, she found herself in the novel she was reading. Hestia turned out to be a simple but very rich girl without a family. Such characters usually appear in stories for a reason, but to change the plot. The extra character lives a carefree life and spends money the way he wants. A lot of money buys status, and the heroine becomes a noblewoman. Having received noble status, Hestia goes to the ball, where she meets the beautiful Diana, who is the main character of the novel. Diana is so beautiful that it's as if our heroine's heart jumps out of her chest and takes her breath away. But the girl was struck not only by Diana, but also by Crown Prince Helios, who appears to us as the main character. Hestia is happy because at this ball she will be able to see all her favorite characters. The second main character, Kailis, who is unrequitedly in love with Diana, is also present at this ball. Everyone Hestia dreamed of meeting gathered at the ball, and she spent a lot of money for this. Our heroine is simply an unimportant extra character, so she can only watch from afar those whom she admires, but that's enough for her. Diana was everyone's favorite, noble, beautiful, kind, and showing love to everyone. Of course, the two best friends we met above immediately fall in love with such an ideal girl. There are also villains in this story, and to be more precise, these are Duke Orcus and his daughter, Duchess Ratona. Duchess Ratona is not so simple, because she knows what power she has and uses it, wanting to marry Helios and become empress. Diana turned out to be an obstacle for the Duchess, and therefore Ratona tries to hurt and humiliate the poor girl, but the main characters immediately come to her defense. With the help of blackmail, the Duchess of Retina forces Helios to accept an engagement to her, and the prince has no choice but to agree to this. As a result, Kale intervened in this marriage and committed a cruel act, helping his best friend. Diana, having learned about what Kale had done, began to argue with him and shout at him, and in a fit of anger, orders him never to come into her sight again, which hurts Kale. After that quarrel, Diana turned her back on Kale forever. The wedding day arrived, and the loving hearts of Helios and Diana finally united. Hestia has been watching this story for a year now, which is approaching its happy ending. The heroine thinks that if the story is already over, then soon she will be able to return home. Helios and Diana are very happy with each other. Although Hestia is happy for the main characters and their happiness, she is also worried about Kailis. The heroine wishes Kailis all the best and hopes that he can move on with his life, even though his heart was broken. We learn that Kailis did not come to the wedding of Helios and Diana, and Hestia is sorry that she will not be able to see him one last time. The novel is over. It's time for the heroine to return home. Although the heroine mentally said goodbye to her beloved Kailis, a year later, fate brought them together again. Kailis looks at the heroine with sadness. Hestia meets her beloved, but it's as if they are separated by a wall that prevents them from getting closer to each other. The end of the novel, the main characters got married and are happy. The main character is ready to return to her normal life, leaving the rich and carefree life from the novel, which she lived for a whole year. Soon, normal life will return. The girl will meet her family and friends, whom she already misses very much, and everything will return to normal. But Hestia's expectations were not met, and she never found herself in her familiar world as she had expected. The girl still believes that she will return. She just needs to wait and goes to bed with hope. Days, weeks, months, a year pass, and she still cannot return home to the family and friends she wanted to see. Hestia has already lost all hope. She does not know what needs to be done in order to return to her real world. The mountain house is all that remains for the girl because she gave all her wealth to charity, thinking that she would return home. In a strange world, completely alone, without family or friends, our heroine no longer understands whether she is alive at all and what will happen next. But the girl is pressed not only by the unknown, but also by the understanding that her beloved Marquis Kailis is still suffering, and from time to time attempts suicide, but fortunately, unsuccessful. We learn that Kailis is haunted by the loss of his best friend and the girl he loved, and it has gotten to the point where he has lost the will to live and spent the entire year trying to die. Kailis is constantly being saved, but he never stops trying to leave this life, and our heroine still hopes that someday he can become happy. All Hestia wanted was for her loved one to find happiness. Every night the girl fell asleep with dreams that she would return home and finally see the book where Kaelis had the happy ending that she so wants for her beloved. But every morning the girl still saw the ceiling of the mountain house, in an empty and lonely, unfamiliar world for her. Hestia suffers. She cannot do anything with her life. She does not understand why she is in this world where she has no one. When you don't know what to do, you just begin to want to disappear from the world, disappear forever, and not suffer anymore. And then the girl sees someone whom she did not expect to see at all, and freezes with shock and surprise in her eyes. Her beloved Kaelis appears in front of the girl, with whom she makes eye contact. This all reminds me of a dream. The girl never expected to meet her love. She was sure that she would forever remain lonely and unnoticed. But the happiness did not last long. Kaelis began to leave, and Hestia made an attempt to stop him, calling out to him. Kaelis turns around, not understanding why a girl unknown to him is calling him, and waits for an explanation of what she needs from him. Meeting her beloved, the girl seems to come to life. Now she is not in so much pain, and she still does not believe that this is not a dream. She is so glad to see him. Hestia abruptly closes her mouth and does not allow her to say a word, and because of this, she is even more surprised, unable to say anything. It turns out that Kaelis is not just walking, but is hiding from men unknown to us who are looking for him. The girl is surprised not by the fact of the search, but by the fact that her lover is so close to her that he practically presses her to him, although this is also due to the fact that he is trying to hide. While Kaelis is trying to understand whether he was carried away, Hestia gets a blush of embarrassment on her face and cannot move from her place. Kaelis finally lets go of the girl and asks for forgiveness, and she understands that there is no point in him apologizing, because she really liked the way he held her close to him, and she would have stood like that all day. A dialogue ensues between Hestia and Kaelis, in which the girl tries to find out who was looking for the guy and how she can help him. In a mountain house, the road to which is very confusing, it is finally not lonely, because the girl invites her love interest there. Kaelis is worried that Hestia is causing trouble, and does not even realize that she has known him for a very long time. While the hero is worried about the inconvenience that he causes, the girl cannot believe her eyes, because her object of desire is sitting right in front of her. The dialogue continues between the characters, during which the heroine tries to find out all the information of interest. The guy admits that he wanted to disappear from this world, which plunges the girl into shock and makes her tense. Hestia understands him, because she too would like to disappear from this world in order to return to hers and finally see her friends and family. The young man notices how similar he is to the heroine, because they both cannot see those they love and miss so much. We again hear the story of Kaelis's broken heart, but from his lips, because he doesn't know that the heroine has known everything about him for a long time. Life without friends and love is hard, but the hero still understands that death will not be a solution for him. Kaelis admits that he is weak and believes that the heroine is much stronger than him, because even when she feels bad, she does not want to die. The girl understands that her beloved did not feel better after difficult events, even after a long time. Unfortunately, the hero only became even sadder over time. The girl, as someone who has been following Kaelis for a long time, immediately noticed all the changes in him and the fact that he began to look much worse. Taking the hero by surprise, Hestia suddenly runs away, promising to return soon. The girl decides that what still holds her back in this novel is that she needs to help her beloved Kael, and she is ready to do anything to give him back the desire to live. There is a chance that delicious food, sleep, walks, and good company can help the hero feel better. Unfortunately, all dreams are crushed in an instant when Kaelis finds himself lying on the floor, covered in blood, and next to him is a dagger, which is the culprit of everything that happened. In this state, the heroine finds Kael, and everything that she bought for him also falls to the floor because the girl's hands are immediately pressed to her face. Hestia does not believe that she could allow this to happen because she left for only a short time and was sure that she could help her loved one. The girl is completely broken because her last hope of understanding the meaning of her presence in this novel is shattered, as is her heart. People mourned the death of the hero for only a day, and then they happily forgot everything and continued to live as if nothing had happened. And they forgot about the terrible news only because it was overshadowed by another, that the main characters of the novel, Diana and Helios, had a scandal, which came as a shock to everyone. It turns out that the love between the spouses has cooled, even though they were in a happy marriage for more than 2 years. Together with Kael, the girl's desire to live also died, because all meaning was gone. She doesn't know how to get out and what to do in this world that is alien to her. Hestia came to the temple every day and simply wandered, because all meaning in her life was forever lost, and she did not know at all what to do next. Everything in life has gone downhill, and there is nothing left to do but think about what happened and what will never happen. And on top of everything else, Diana's strength began to weaken. So we reached the moment from which the story itself began. The heroine prays to God to save her beloved while in the temple, when suddenly everything turns white. We see a richly furnished room and realize that the girl has returned to the way she lived before. Hestia doesn't understand how it happened that she was in the temple, and then, surprisingly, she ended up in her old room. The heroine was feeling excellent, which was no less surprising than her unexpected movement. And then Hestia understands what is happening and where she is, because she recognizes a view that is identical to the one that was on the evening of the wedding of Diana and Hel. Some unknown force moved the heroine right to the end of the novel, and now she will have to find out why this was done. It is on this day, when the main characters of the novel get married, that Chaol makes his first attempt at suicide, and therefore Hestia is going to take everything into her own hands and save him. The girl hopes that she has a chance to save her beloved, and she does not want to miss it. Diana always took Chaol's care for granted, and therefore never looked at him the way he looked at her, with love. There are guards at Chaol's house who are suspicious of Hestia, and do not want to let her see the hero without reason. Even after saying that the heroine has an important message for the young man, no one is going to let her in. But nothing can stop the girl, so they resort to a distraction, deceiving the guards that Saint Diana is behind them. The security is a ruse, and Hestia still manages to get inside. The girl intends to show her beloved that Diana does not deserve what he did for her, and as a result, the heroine catches him right before attempting to commit suicide. Hestia is ready to do anything to convince her lover to commit such a rash act. Chaol clearly did not expect this and froze in place, not knowing what to do or say at the moment. The suicide attempt is stopped, and all that remains is to convince the hero not to try it again, because now there is a girl next to him who is ready to take care of him. Taking everything into her own hands, Hestia decided not to beat around the bush, but immediately said that she wanted to become a marchioness for her beloved. Here we meet Uros, who is Chaol's butler, and he replaced the hero's parents and always took care of him. The butler, like our heroine, hoped that Chaol would be able to overcome his broken heart and move on with his life. But instead, Uros found a mess in the room, his master with a knife at his neck, and an unfamiliar girl who simply burst into the house. And on top of everything else, this unknown girl proposed to the Marquis, which no one expected. The heroine decides that she will never allow Chaol to die again, so she now decides not only to watch from the sidelines, but also to join the game. But all the girl's confidence disappears as soon as the Marquis begins to speak. But instead of the expected answer, Hestia heard only laughter, which suddenly began to sound from the lips of her love. Chaol laughs at this whole situation and asks if he looks so frivolous. What a surprise everyone was when in the end the Marquis told the heroine to do what she wanted. This was such a shock for the girl that she even asked if she had just imagined all this. The answer was so surprising and unexpected. Of course, this surprised Hestia very much, even though she suggested it herself, but agreeing to a wedding with a girl you see for the first time sounds too crazy. And after all this dialogue, the Marquis simply leaves, leaving the heroine and the butler, who do not even know each other, to figure out everything further. Chaol wanted to relax and be alone with himself, so he simply drives away his butler and the girl with whom he agreed to get married. Hestia and Uros froze, looking at each other and digesting what just happened, because it turned out to be a shock for both. The situation turned out to be quite unusual, so it's hard to believe in its reality and accept everything right away. After all the events, Hestia and Uros finally introduce themselves to each other and get to know each other in a calm atmosphere. A regular dialogue takes place, with the help of which Uros learns more about the one who will soon become his master's bride. The girl expected that now she would be scolded for simply breaking into the Marquis, but instead she heard only gratitude in her direction because she saved Chaol's life. But Uros doesn't even realize that this previously unknown girl knows everything about Marquis, and therefore wonders how she knew that Chaol needed help. The girl has to come up with a reason for breaking into someone else's house in a matter of seconds, and the main thing is that everything sounds convincing so as not to give herself away. Throwing everything away at superpowers would be the easiest option, but we don't know if that would have bad consequences. Since there was no time to come up with more convincing answers, Hestia decided to say that she could see the future. But from the look of the butler, it became clear that he was definitely not ready to believe it. The heroine decided to go to the end and said something that other people do not know, in order to prove that she is not deceiving, and sees the truth much more than an ordinary person. Now Euros begins to doubt that she is telling a lie, because she has information that is unknown to almost anyone. It plays into the girl's hands that she perfectly remembers everything from the novel, because this increases her chances of convincing the butler. So Euros learns that this was not the last attempt of the Marquis to lose his life, which he no longer values at all. After the butler begins to listen to the girl's words, she makes a promise that she will save Kale. The butler is in complete shock, but there is nothing left to do but listen to the stranger, because the life of his master, whom he has always cared about, is at stake. Hestia explains the reason for her proposal to the Marquis by saying that this is all just to save his life, because this way she will always be there and at any moment will be able to prevent something that has dire consequences. The girl does not need any wealth. The main thing is that her beloved is alive, healthy, and happy. The story doesn't sound convincing enough even for a novel, but there is nothing else to do but hope that they will believe it. Fortunately for the girls, she was not kicked out, and was even allowed to discuss all this with the Marquis later when he felt better. By the end of the dialogue, the time was approaching night, so the heroine was allowed to spend the night in the Marquis's house, in a separate room. After such a difficult and eventful day, Hestia will finally be able to rest, so that tomorrow she will again try to save her loved one with renewed vigor. In one day, the girl achieved a lot, and now she just has to continue in the same spirit to achieve what she wants. But Hestia was not the only one who was puzzled by what to do next, because at that time, Kale could not sleep either. The Marquis is confused and doesn't know at all what to do and how to continue to live, because in a short time, he has lost people dear to him, and now he has also agreed to marry a stranger. In a fit of despair, the hero mentally turns to his beloved Diana, asking her for advice. The reckless act that the heroine committed still surprises even herself, and she still does not understand how she was able to do it. Only now does the girl realize what she signed up for, because a wedding is quite an important period in everyone's life, and she goes into it without really thinking about anything. But what has been said cannot be taken back, so Hestia can only come to terms with it, and the fact that she is just in a novel calms her down completely. The girl is still trying to convince herself that she did not strive to become Kale's wife, even though her feelings say otherwise. The heroine's desires fade into the background, because the most important thing she wants to achieve now is to save the life of her loved one, and not to get married successfully. In the end, the girl settles on the fact that she is ready to do everything possible to achieve her goal and help Kale. Hestia decided that her most important task in the novel was precisely that she must convince the Marquis to commit suicide. A mysterious voice suddenly tells the heroine that they will always be with her, no matter what happens. The dream ends with thoughts about who the voices are that promise to help her, because it always seemed to her that she was alone in this world. Having fully woken up, Hestia continues to think about the strange dream that she had, and maybe it means something important. Then the butler appears in her room to greet the girl and ask how she slept in her new place. In the Marquis's house, the beds are so soft that the girl sleeps well, and the butler is happy about this. Euros, as an attentive person, notices Hestia's excitement and gently hints that she is unable to hide her condition. After the usual dialogue, the girl dares to ask about the condition of her beloved, about whom she is very worried. Although the butler gives an answer to this, saying that the Marquis is better today, he is surprised because the heroine should see the future, but does not know this. The girl once again has to come up with an excuse on the fly, and this time she reports that she sees only big events. To which the butler only says that he was joking, which puts Hestia in an awkward position. It's hard enough to trust a girl you've only known for a day, but she saved the Marquis, and that fact cannot be denied. And then the butler takes the heroine by surprise, saying that on the orders of the Marquis, he was preparing documents, and Hestia immediately understands what he's talking about. But first of all, she's worried about the fact that Euros worked all night while she was sleeping soundly. The meeting with the Marquis is so close, but you should understand that at the moment he is in a vulnerable position, and every word must be chosen wisely. And then the girl again amazes Euros, asking him to bring something that Kale loves very much, and this is known only to the Marquis himself and his butler. After all the conversations, Hestia still goes to her beloved, although she is very worried about their meeting. She understands that the dialogue will be difficult, and is already preparing for a difficult conversation in advance. And then Hestia sees Kale, who seemed to be waiting for her, looking at the door without taking his eyes off. It seemed that after this heavy look, the last hope for at least some kind of confidence, as if nothing had happened, had disappeared. All the memories associated with Kale's previous death suddenly began to emerge before the girl's eyes. But Hestia was able to pull herself together, because now she can fix everything if she tries. However, the girl's confidence and willpower do not help her start a dialogue, and an awkward pause hangs between the characters. The girl understands that she is unable to even move, because in front of her is the one whom she has loved from afar for a long time. Having made up her mind, Hestia nevertheless sits down next to Kale, and they begin to read the documents that the butler prepared for them. According to these documents, it turns out that after signing, Hestia will have all the powers that Kalis has, and she will also receive the status of Marquise. The girl was surprised by how well the document was compiled, which was created hastily, which shows the competence of the butler. To prove her honesty, Hestia refuses the clause in the contract that includes the girl's rights to the Marquis' property and money, and as a result, this part is excluded. While the girl and the butler are discussing the details, the Marquis, without even reading anything, signs the document without any hesitation. Hestia and Uros are very surprised by this turn of events, because they didn't even have time to edit the document. But Kaelis, with all his appearance, shows how much he doesn't care about formalities, and he only wants rest and silence. This action once again shows how depressed the Marquis is at the moment, and that life no longer means anything to him. Every action and every look of Kaelis makes the heroine worry about him even more. The girl tries to somehow cheer up her love, and makes a promise that he will definitely not regret his decision. She even, despite her excitement, manages to show him her beautiful radiant smile in order to somehow lift Kaelis's mood. But instead of an answering smile, the girl only receives words that she should leave and finally leave him alone. On this note, the meeting between the girl and the butler with the Marquis ends, and they leave his room in bewilderment, thinking about everything that has just happened. After Kale's behavior, the souls of both those who came out are now heavy, and the girl begins to think about the fact that she needs to get to the temple. The butler does not understand the girl's zeal at all, and asks the question why exactly she was needed in the temple. Hestia explains her impulse to go to the temple by saying that she needs to return something to the Marquis, which puzzles the butler. According to the girl, first of all, she intends to return Diana, because she is very dear to the Marquis. Diana is not just an ordinary girl, but a saint who has divine power. But it turns out that Diana was not always considered a saint, because she was from the common people, and therefore her position in the temple was not strong. And only thanks to Kale and his donation for the temple, in the form of the most fertile land, they helped Diana become a saint and achieve the position that gave her a happy and long life. If it weren't for Kale, then Diana would have nothing, but at the same time she turned away from him during a difficult period of his life, which broke his heart. Hestia understands how unfairly Diana treated someone who always took care of her and helped her in everything. And while the heroine was in her thoughts, she had already been brought to the temple, where she so wanted to go to help her beloved Marquis. The girl is going to talk to Diana and open her eyes to everything that Kale did for her, while she took it all for granted and did not notice. And then all the heroine's thoughts are confused by an unknown young man who, out of breath, turns to her, asking about the Marquis's carriage in which she arrived. But not seeing the Marquis himself at the carriage, the mysterious hero is surprised and asks where Mr. Kale himself is. Hestia is asked why the Marquis arrived without warning, to which the girl replies that at the moment she will take his place, which further shocks the already surprised guy. But the shocking facts don't end there, because Hestia introduces herself as Kelis's wife, which the stranger of Marquise. Hestia turned out to be not as simple as the high priest assumed, because she knows much more than they could imagine. And the heroine skillfully uses her knowledge, because if all the secrets of the temple end up on the pages of the newspaper, then their entire legend, built on lies and greed, will collapse. The high priest understands the precarious situation in which he and the temple itself are now, so he cannot even utter a word in response to the girl. The last chance to justify himself was for the high priest to try to pretend that he did not understand at all what Hestia was talking about, but from his behavior, it was clear that he was already on the brink. The girl notices the panic in the eyes of the high priest and understands that he will never get away with it, no matter what he tries to come up with, because his great secret has been revealed. Finding herself in a winning position, Hestia is finally able to directly laugh at the high priest. The girl also decided to discuss the duplicity of Diana, who is a saint, and used the love of the Marquis for her own purposes. And if we take into account the fact that Diana is a simpleton, but at the same time became the wife of the crown prince, then everything will only get worse, because the aristocracy will not be happy with this turn of events, and because of these words, the high priest tensed even more. Although Diana is supported by the common people, the aristocracy does not like those who were not one of them, but at the same time began to have the kind of power that the saint has. If the whole world finds out about the terrible secrets of the temple and the saint, then they will have problems that they are unlikely to cope with. The high priest's panic increases with every word the girl says, because he understands more and more what a real threat comes from her and that he can't argue with her. For Hestia, it does not matter how cruel her accusations are, because she is ready to do anything for the sake of the person she loves, so she calmly continues to threaten the high priest. The girl is even ready to go to the emperor with this news, because she is ready to achieve her goal in all possible ways. The high priest is still trying to save his reputation and the reputation of the temple, because he begins to say that the girl has no evidence. But in response to the priest's attempts to wriggle out, the girl only grins, completely confident in her victory in this dispute. As a result, the temple servants leave, asking Hestia to wait a couple of minutes to discuss their current situation. The temple, and those who are in charge of it, are themselves not without sin, so the emperor's check and what is revealed during it can greatly harm everyone who serves in this temple. So the girl is sure that the high priest will not be able to do anything to stop her, because she is in a more advantageous position than him. And the evidence that Hestia was talking about actually doesn't exist. She was just able to intimidate everyone so much that they didn't even try to check, but immediately trusted her. The heroine understands what a precarious position the temple is in now, so she begins to calmly say what she wants, and even slightly mock the employees. Hestia, in her opinion, acted generously, because she did not immediately go to the emperor, but decided to settle everything quietly and peacefully, without illuminating it to the whole world. The high priest accepted that he could no longer do anything against the Marquise, and he could only come to terms with it and agree to her terms. No one knows whether the high priest will do anything else to avoid giving away such valuable land for the temple. The Marquise returns back only in the evening and is immediately met by the butler, who exclaims her name with alarm. Before the girl had time to enter the house, Wuros immediately attacked her with various questions, not knowing what she had been doing in the temple for so long. And then a document appears before the butler's eyes, which states the guarantee of ownership of the land of Ilion, so valuable to the temple. Wuros was incredibly happy about this, because this land was one of the most expensive, and now it finally returned to the possessions of the Marquis. The butler and Hestia jump happily, knowing how difficult it was to reclaim the land of Ilion, but Hestia was able to handle it, making herself and Uros happy. Kale himself watched this celebration from afar as he stood alone at the window. It seemed that Kailis was avoiding the girl and did not want to catch her eye at all, moving unnoticed and quietly. But even though he tried to hide, the girl still felt his gaze, which was directed in her direction. In order to somehow dispel the awkwardness between Hestia and Kailis, the butler invites the girl to tell the hero such wonderful news herself. And it is logical that the Marquise herself should tell Kale everything, because it was thanks to her that the earth returned. But the girl is afraid to go to meet him. As a result, the girls decide to have the butler tell the Marquis everything himself, because he is not yet ready to see the heroine. While Uros goes to tell the news to Kailis, the girl will go to rest, because this day was quite difficult and eventful for her. The Marquise is very pleased with herself, because she has begun to put into action her plan to save her beloved. Before going to bed, the girl is already planning what she will do next. Namely, the first thing she will do is go to check the land that she was able to return. Although Kale himself needs to inspect the land, the heroine wants him to rest, so she's going to go herself. Absorbed in thoughts, Hestia quickly falls asleep, exhausted from the day. And while the girl sleeps soundly, absorbed in her victory in obtaining the land, others are growing worried about the information about the Marquis's unexpected wife. One hero, even after seeing all the documents, could not believe what he learned, because he had not yet seen it with his own eyes. Information spreads quickly, so there is no way to stop its flow. Kailis was quite surprised at how quickly the girl was able to get the land that the temple treasured back. All the girl's courage and perseverance disappears every time she meets her beloved, and here again she sits awkwardly and does not know what to say to him in response. This is how their dialogue goes on, in awkwardness and embarrassment, while the girl tries to apologize for doing everything in secret from the young man. Although Hestia planned to go to inspect the newly acquired land, all plans were ruined as soon as the butler came to her with the words that the Marquis was calling her. The girl is very surprised that Kale is calling her to him, because before he always tried to avoid her. The heroine began to think that since Kaelis wants to see her, then he is definitely angry with her because she returned the earth without his knowledge. It turns out that the Marquis only now found out that his wife's name is Hestia and decided to clarify this with her. There was again an awkward pause between the characters, which often occurs in their dialogues because they are not at all familiar enough to communicate calmly. Their eyes meet, and Kale no longer tries to hide the fact that he is looking directly at the girl. And then Hestia again begins to talk a lot indiscriminately because she is still very nervous in front of her beloved. The heroine notices every minor detail, even the fact that Kaelius is reading the newspaper that she bought him. Taking a break from the newspaper, the Marquis turns to Hestia, to which she instantly responds. And then Kaelis asks a question that the girl did not expect, because he asked why she wanted to marry him, because they don't even know each other. And here Hestia is faced with a choice, and she must decide whether to tell Kale the truth or once again come up with some kind of excuse. The Marquise calmly and patiently awaits the heroine's answer while she thinks about what to say to her, and without thinking twice, the girl informs the hero that the reason is her hatred of the main characters of the novel, the Crown Prince and his wife Diana. Hestia understands that stupid excuses will not work on her beloved because he is very smart and perceptive, and so the girl honestly said that she wanted to help Kaelis so that he would stop thinking about death. Helios and Diana greatly offended Hestia's beloved, and therefore she wants to force him to apologize to him. The girl wants the main characters to regret crossing Kaelis' path. The Marquis is so stunned by such a confession that he now simply remains silent and ponders everything he has heard. Such confessions will stun anyone and make them think for a long time. And then it turns out that the butler had already told the Marquis about Hestia's gift to see the future, and this was all just a test. Kaelis, of course, was very surprised by such words from his butler, and of course this is hard to believe. So Kale at first thought that it was time for Uros to retire, but the butler believed in this for a reason. He has evidence that she knows something that is unknown to others. The girl even refused the Marquis's property, and this shows that she definitely does not need the Marquis's money. You can tell from Hestia's behavior and actions that she truly cares about Kaelis. The Marquis finally met a man who does not need wealth or status from him, but only to help him cope with his pain. Kale doesn't understand why a girl they've never met does so much for him. Hestia doesn't even know how to explain her desire to help Kaelis, because he has no idea that he is her love. And the heroine understands that the truth sounds too strange and unrealistic, so she urgently needs to come up with a clear explanation. And Kale keeps pressing, insisting that she tell the truth about her reasons for helping him. The heroine is still trying to gather her thoughts so she can start explaining everything. The girl decided to start her excuses by asking whether Kale liked what she was doing. If the Marquis doesn't like something about her, then Hestia is ready to sign a divorce agreement at that very moment and leave his house. The girl realized that no matter what the answer was, she still remained only a third wheel for Kale, and if something did not suit him, then she could retreat. The girl's answer surprised Kale very much, and he didn't even immediately find what to answer. Kaelis decided not to comment on the girl's words, but simply changed the topic, saying that Helios had sent a letter. But since Hestia started it all, then she also needs to deal with it in this case. And Kale gave the girl every right to do what she wanted, and he would not interfere with it. The girl understands that now no one will stop her, and she will finally be able to avenge Kale. Having received permission from Kale himself, the girl immediately intends to go to a meeting with the Crown Prince. And in order for Helios to believe Hestia, the Marquis wrote a letter for her in confirmation. Just as the girl was unexpectedly called, she was also unexpectedly thrown out the door. And at the same moment that Hestia left Kale, the butler came running to her. Although Euros did not hear what the heroes were talking about, he immediately begins to apologize on behalf of his master because he knows him very well. But it turns out that the butler apologized in vain because nothing happened, and later he finds out that the heroine is going to go somewhere again. The girl says that she is going to go to a meeting with the crown prince, which is also part of her plan. Euros, as a competent worker, is ready to help the heroine and support her in everything. He immediately assumed that they would now prepare for this important meeting. But he would not be the only one to help, and in order to call the others for help, he immediately shouted loudly about the meeting of the Marchioness with the crown prince. Hearing the cry, many surprised girls who worked for the Marquis immediately came running. Everyone came running so quickly, enthusiastically rejoicing, that Hestia was even a little afraid of such pressure. The girls did their best, because in the end, the Marquise's outfit was so irresistible that the heroine herself was surprised by it. Hestia was waiting for an important meeting, so she had to look perfect in order to show her status with one look. However, the heroine was surprised not only by her appearance, but also by how everyone cares about her, even though she became the Marquis's wife recently, and very suddenly. And the reason for such attention was that Hestia always tries to help Kale, and even returned his valuable land, so now all the Marquis's servants began to treat her with respect. The heroine was very seduced by the fact that she was trusted and loved even more than Saint Diana, the favorite of the entire novel. And Hestia, full of determination, goes to meet the most beautiful people in the novel, namely, its main characters. But later she realizes that she was too self-confident because she is far from Diana's beauty. Seeing how beautiful the main characters were, Hestia began to worry. But she understood that it was stupid to feel fear just because of their appearance, and tried to gather her strength. The main characters met the girl, not to say particularly friendly or welcoming, and immediately the Hestia start asking questions, asking if the main characters have met the girl before. And then the heroine begins to remember how she first saw Diana when she first appeared in the novel. Previously, Diana looked simple, in simple clothes, not as elegant as she does now. Diana is considered a saint because she can cure any disease with just her smile. Diana rightfully bears the title of saint because she is kind and helps absolutely everyone who turns to her. The modesty, kindness, and beauty of the saint makes everyone fall in love with her, without exception. But, unfortunately, over time, Diana has changed, and now she no longer has everything that Hestia saw when they first met. When asked if they had met before, the heroine replied that she was clearly confused with someone. But in reality, this whole yoke made Hestia very happy, because the couple doesn't even know what she's up to and who she really is. The main characters took the guest to a beautiful room that looked very rich, which was understandable because she came to the crown prince himself. The girl did not wait long and immediately provided the main characters with a marriage document and a personal letter from the Marquis to prove that she was not a liar. The couple immediately recognized Kale's handwriting, so they can be absolutely sure that Hestia is not a liar. Diana reread all the documents provided by him and seemed to not believe her eyes. No one expected Kale to marry because he was always in love only with Diana and did not look at anyone else, even when the saint did not choose him. In addition, Kalis is not the kind of person who makes important decisions without thinking, because he is a very reasonable young man. But all the evidence suggests that Hestia is not lying, so all that remains is to accept that it is true. Kale got married, and this is a pure and irrefutable fact, because the contract, the letter, and the Marquis's carriage in which the girl arrived prove all this. Hestia remains pleased that the Crown Prince and Diana finally believed her. The moment they took in all the evidence, extreme surprise appeared on their faces, which amused Hestia greatly. The Crown Prince began his dialogue by telling the girl that even if she was the Marchioness, showing with these words that he still did not fully believe her. And he talks about how Hestia abused her power by taking the temple's land and threatening them. To this, the girl replies that there were no threats, and she does not understand what they are talking about. But Helios continues to maintain that these were definitely threats. But the girl was well prepared for this dialogue, so she immediately answers that the excessive use of her position did not come from her, but, on the contrary, from the temple, because they simply took the land donated to Diana for themselves. Here, Diana already enters into the dialogue, saying that the temple has no personal property, so there was no appropriation of land, because everything that is dedicated to the temple belongs to the gods. Hestia then had a question for Diana personally, because why, in this case, the saint uses her powers only for the sake of the imperial family. The saint stopped helping the common people, hiding behind the walls of the imperial castle in wealth. Diana left the commoners, even though she had previously been one of them, but the authorities alienated her from her roots. Now, the saint does not save everyone, as she did before, at the very beginning of the novel. And indeed, she uses the powers given to her by the gods the way they would like, because she has turned away from people who need help. To this, Diana can't even think of what to say in her own defense, because she understands that Hestia is right. And then her husband comes to the saint's rescue, telling the heroine to watch her language. Hestia decided to change tactics and begin to press for pity. But at the same time, she noted that she was not asking the prince at all, but he still answered for his wife, without allowing her to say a word. The Marchioness's next question was whether the crown prince wanted Kale to donate his land to a temple in honor of the saint. The girl says that the Marquis was in love with Diana, and that was the only reason he donated his land. Hestia makes it clear that Caelus's feelings for Diana are in the past, calling it old love. As a result, the married couple has nothing to answer to the words of the Marquise, because everything she said is the pure truth, and they know it. The heroine's plan is that she wants to explain all the old actions of her loved one so that he can quickly move on without thinking about the past. And although Hestia says that she is not offended by the crown prince and his wife, in her thoughts she challenges herself, wanting to take revenge for her beloved. After all this dialogue, Helios looks very depressed, and it is clear that he is not happy about the girl's visit. The crown prince does not understand how the heroine was able to marry Caelus, and even the day after his wedding to Diana. Then, Hestia begins to explain to them that all people are different, and not everyone gets married only because of the fiery love that the crown prince and the saint had. But Helios still does not understand why Caelus chose Hestia when there were always many girls from noble families around him. The heroine does not understand how one can treat people so horribly, choosing them as things. And then Hestia decided to inform the lovers that she, like Diana, has a superpower. The heroine told them that she could see the future. As Hestia had predicted, the crown prince did not believe her without proof. But Diana was amazed, because she was always sure that she was the only one so special in the whole world, but it turned out that she was not. And to prove it, Hestia decides to predict the future. Listening to this story afterwards, Kale became very interested in what she told them, to which the girl replied that she predicted the capture of a major robber, which worried the entire capital of the empire. Hestia shared that the crown prince did not believe her and called her a fraud. Then Kale asked what Diana said, because for the most part, Hestia talked about the crown prince, and the heroine began to talk about the saint, while being very nervous because she knows about Kale's feelings. Marquis Caelus listened carefully to everything his wife told him, and the girl noticed that since Kale asks about Diana, he is still thinking about her. But the young man was glad that the land, which he had already forgotten about, began to belong to him again. And he thanked Hestia for this act, because this way he began to feel at least a little better. The Marquis approaches the girl very close, saying that he wants to express his gratitude to her. He came too close, and Hestia even began to feel embarrassed about this, because Kale usually behaves more distantly. And the girl herself did not expect any thanks, because the fact that she sees her beloved and helps him is enough for her. Hestia's imagination works great, and she was already starting to come up with options for what Kale would do to thank her. And it all got to the point where the girl began to worry even more because of her ideas. And while the Marquise was soaring in the clouds, absorbed in her thoughts, Kale could only wonder what she was thinking about. As a result, the Marquis ran out of patience, and he clarified once again what she still wanted, in order to understand at least a little what was going on in her head. The girl didn't expect any gratitude, so she doesn't even know what to ask. As a result, the girl decided that she wanted to hire a tutor, and really surprised the Marquis with her choice. And she asked Kale if he had someone in mind, allegedly hinting at something. The girl said that she wanted to bring Madame Harmony from the salon. For some reason, Caelus clarified whether it really should be her, as if he was not satisfied with this choice of tutor. Hestia was surprised by Kale's reaction, because just an ordinary tutor caused too many emotions. And all because Madame Harmony, it turns out, is the aristocrat closest to Diana, which offended Kale. And then we learn that they began to treat Diana well, only after Kale poured deadly poison into two women who were against the saint. But Lady Diana, even now, is not loved by everyone in the novel, and there are still many nobles who continue to secretly hate her. Although there are many nobles who do not treat Diana very kindly, for some reason, Hestia chose as her tutor the one who, on the contrary, loves the main character. Madame Harmony is one of the few nobles who treated Diana well from the very beginning. She supported the saint in everything and helped her. It was Madame Harmony who taught Diana court etiquette and always encouraged her not to give up her love, and she was a spiritual mentor for the saint. Hestia understands that Madame will not be able to restrain herself and pretend that she knows nothing about the situation that is happening and will definitely want to discuss it. And Diana, in order not to be in a precarious position, must enlist the support of the nobility as soon as possible. And that's why Hestia decided that she would get Harmony before Diana did. All this in order to avenge your loved one. Kaelus nevertheless agrees, realizing that he cannot refuse the girl, due to the fact that he wanted to express his gratitude, and the promise cannot be taken back. It was clear from the girl's behavior that she was up to something, but Kael still didn't understand what exactly. Kaelus feels supported by Hestia, and he is very grateful to her for everything she does for him. The heroine is pleased that Kael notices all her efforts, because this means that she is not doing it in vain, just gratitude, and the girl is already happy that Kael is showing his feelings for her. It's also nice for Hestia that the Marquis addressed her not as you, but as you. The heroine goes to bed with pleasant thoughts, because all her efforts were not in vain. The next morning, Hestia asked the butler to contact Madame Harmonia, whom the heroine wants to see as her tutor. The future tutor expressed a desire for their lessons to take place at her home, where Hestia could come at a time convenient for her. The girl decides in advance how she should behave in front of Madame in order to make a good impression on her. Since the heroine has read the novel she is currently in many times, she knows about the preferences of each hero and is completely confident in herself about this. And so, encouraging herself, Hestia went to meet Madame Harmonia. But the girl did not expect that she would have an appointment so soon, so she was already standing at the door of her tutor. The house the heroine found herself in looked magical, and she was greeted by a smiling and rather friendly young man. The girl was asked the purpose of the visit and her name, and then she introduced herself as Marquise Hestia. The rest of the people who were in the house, having heard who the heroine was, immediately began to whisper and gossip. Hestia felt that the eyes of everyone in the room were directed only at her, and because of this, she felt uncomfortable, because she was not used to such attention. The girl guessed that everyone already knew everything about her and what she had done. Hestia's only thoughts were that she wanted to get away from all these looks as quickly as possible. And then, like a life preserver, Madame Harmony appeared, which made the Marquise happy. Madame took the girl into a separate room, in which there were no other people, for which the heroine was very grateful. Harmony was surprised by the fact that the Marquise herself came to her, although usually high-born people call Madame to their home and do not visit her themselves. To which Hestia replied that all this was done only to express her serious intentions. In Diana, Madame was captivated by her honesty and modesty, and therefore the heroine decided to behave in a similar way in order to win the favor of Harmony. For effect, Hestia even began to cry in order to touch her tutor. Madame Harmony immediately rushed to the girl's aid, trying to calm her down and wanting to help. For the heroine, it was all just a game, and so far her plan worked perfectly, because she was able to convincingly pretend to be the one who needed help. Hestia began to talk about Lord Elay, who was supposedly her stepfather, and then we understand that she came up with some kind of legend for Madame. Although the girl bought her title, she began to tell Harmony a completely different story about how she was adopted in order to be sent into secular society. And so she told her tutor a perfectly crafted and sad story, which she passed off as her life. And Hestia concluded this tale by saying that she lacks a lot of knowledge, because the title of Marquise appeared too unexpectedly, and she does not know what to do now. Everything that the girl said amazed Madame, who was very deeply imbued with the fictitious story. Hestia temporarily became someone who Harmony would definitely like, having collected the best qualities in herself. And all this in order for Madame Harmony to agree to help her, and in the future to come over to her side. But instead of agreeing to help at that very second, as Hestia had hoped, Harmonia became thoughtful, as if she was unsure of something, and the girl already began to wonder what she had done wrong. But everything turned out to be much simpler, because Madame simply did not understand how the Marquis married Hestia. All this time, Madame's thoughts were focused only on how Kael got a wife. And if Harmony asks this, it means that she was interested in Hestia and her fate, and the heroine was striving for this. And then the girl said that she had long admired the Marquis, and was always worried about him, dreaming of helping. Madame was delighted with how heroically the Marquise acted in saving Kael from the pain of a broken heart. And now the girl wants to repay Kael with kindness for agreeing to become her husband, and it was clear how Madame liked this heartbreaking story. And the girl even visited the temple for the sake of her beloved, because she is very kind and grateful to Kael. The girl also showed her modesty, saying that she knows her place well and understands that she can't hold a candle to Diana. And this is how the girl managed to gain the favor of Madame Harmony. After listening to Hestia's story, Madame concluded that she was always ready to help a girl who was in a difficult situation. Madame immediately ran to create a plan for Hestia's training, and we were convinced that she was a wonderful character. Madame began to teach the girl everything she knew, and it turned out to be quite difficult for Hestia because there was too much information, but it was all necessary for her plan. A few days later, the maid Clarice brought news that the robber about whom the heroine had been predicted had been caught. And while the maid is happy that a dangerous criminal has been caught, Hestia is doing her homework, which never ends. And if the girl's prediction came true, it means that Diana and Helios will have to believe that Hestia can predict the future. While everything is going smoothly in terms of the heroine, she decided to ask how the Marquis was feeling, to which the maid became noticeably nervous. It turned out that Kale now had a guest, to which the girl was surprised, because it seemed that right now he was in no condition to host anyone. The girl, without thinking twice, asked if the guest's name was Hyperion, which amazed the maid because it turned out to be true. Hyperion is not an ordinary person, because in fact, this is the name under which the Crown Prince is hiding, and Hestia immediately ran to her husband as soon as she learned this information. The Crown Prince came to the Marquis in broad daylight, and no one even warned Hestia, which angered her. At the entrance to the Marquis's room, the heroine encounters the butler, who explains his presence at the door by saying that he was simply worried that something might go wrong. Hestia tells Eros not to apologize because she understands him perfectly. The butler tells the girl that nothing but conversation has happened so far, and then they hear some noise. Running into the room, the girl finds a picture in which Kale is standing with his hand bleeding due to hitting the glass. The girl immediately ran up to her beloved, asking him what happened, and at that time the butler began to call the doctor. While Hestia was trying to help Kale, Helios approached him, but he did not have time to say anything because the heroine drove him away, blaming him for what happened to the Marquis. The Crown Prince listened to the girl and left, finally apologizing to Kaelis. It was clear how much Marquis was in pain, but there was nothing else to do but wait for the doctor. Kale was given medical assistance, and now he was lying on the bed, and his wife was sitting next to him. The wound turned out to be shallow, and appeared due to the fact that the Marquis hit the glass in a fit of emotion, and the girl became curious about what Kaelis was talking about with the Crown Prince. The Marquis thought that the girl had foreseen his meeting with Helios, to which she replied that she did not see such details. It turns out that the hero did not want to host the Crown Prince, and he admits that if it had been his will, he would never have met him. Heli, when he came to the Marquis, began to ask about his condition, and in response, Kale asked the Crown Prince if he was enjoying his honeymoon, but the main character of the novel was not going to answer this because he came only to ask questions. The Crown Prince immediately began trying to talk about the Marquis's wife, who seemed too suspicious to him. According to Kale, there is no point in being careful in life, so it doesn't matter who you get married to and how wrong it is. And then Helios heard a confession that discouraged him, because the Marquis admitted that he wanted to die on the wedding day of the main characters. And he added that it was Hestia who saved him from this. And what does the prince care who the hero chose to marry? Helios was offended that Kale did not share his pain with him, because they are friends and should tell each other everything, while again making the Marquis guilty. The Crown Prince also added that Kale has changed a lot, and it will be painful for Diana to see the hero like this, because she worries about him. The mention of Diana was unnecessary, because it upset Kale even more, due to the fact that the girl did not send a single letter. Now we know what exactly made the Marquis angry, because talking about Diana was a bad idea. While Hestia and Kaelis were alone, the young man decided to open his heart to the girl, telling him exactly why he wanted to commit suicide. The young man admitted that at first he was upset because he could not die, but in the end, thanks to the girl, he was able to realize a lot. Meanwhile, Helios told Diana that their mutual friend, Kale, decided to commit suicide on their wedding day, but Hestia was able to stop him, and Diana began to worry that there was too much evidence of Hestia's superpowers. The Crown Prince and the Saint decided that they must reveal the true goals of Kaelis's wife, and then we moved to the girls' tea party, among whom was Hestia. We learned that a few days ago, the Marquis received an invitation to a tea party with Countess Erenice. Countess Erenice turned out to be an active person, which is not inferior in authority to Madame Harmony. The heroine understands that she was invited only because of curiosity about her person, but she is still very nervous, because if she screws up, she will have problems. The main problem of the heroine is that she knows practically nothing about Countess Erenice, because in the novel she was only a minor character. Even Madame Harmony noticed the girl's excitement and wanted to help her cope with this situation. Although Hestia does not know how to behave correctly in front of Erenice, She cannot simply turn away from the invitation, but the heroine is ready to do everything to help Kale. And these words surprised Harmony that even in such a difficult situation, she thinks about her husband. She can't refuse the invitation because rumors will spread later, so this option is out of the question. But fortunately, Madame is ready to help her with this situation. That's how the girl got to this tea party. Hestia is very worried because she is sitting among strangers and does not even know how to behave correctly. And then all the girl's attention turned to the Marquise, and she was lucky that she knew at least a couple of techniques that Madame taught her. Although the Countess will look down on Hestia, Harmonia was able to teach her behavior that could help the heroine please all the ladies who will be at the tea party. The heroine needs to behave politely, modestly, and say what the ladies want to hear. Flattery helped Hestia to please everyone present at the tea party. The girl answered all the questions that were asked to her, but she told everything in such a way that it amazed the ladies. And then Hestia was asked how she felt about the fact that Caelus had been in love with Diana for a long time. And Harmonia also spoke about such a tactless question and prepared the heroine on how to answer correctly. Everyone expected Hestia to react to this question with anger, but she was ready, so she controlled herself. Although this tea party was difficult for the